Huh? Oh, you want me to hold my guitar? Okay. Hey, Adam, can I borrow that? Is that why you're holding it?
Busy right now. Hey, give up that guitar, buddy.
Thanks.
Is that a Murphy?
This one?
Or is that a real one?
No, it's not a real one. It's the same made by the same guy that made that other one that I have that I've been using. I used on the Appetite record with the zebra pickups. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And I got this one from Alan Niven. I traded him some guitars. He's like, I got another one of those. I think the guy's name is Chris.
Right.
And he died.
Mm-hmm.
You know, is that the same guy?
It's the same. The one with the zebras is the one that we had at Cars and Guitars and Rockstars.
No, it looks like that one, but that's not the one.
Oh, okay.
No, that one's very coveted. It's the only one like it. But this one is just like it. I use this one on the record,
Yeah.
on the Yardbirds thing.
I love
The
is that a shadow or
pick
a
guard.
chunk of-
It's where the pick guard was.
Yeah. Look at
So.
the wood on that in the light.
Yeah.
It's got depth. and-
We're ready, Dave.
You okay?
It's going out?
It's got gorgeous depth.
Yeah. It sounds good too.
Yeah.
But it's made by the same guy, and all these years later, I couldn't get Gibson to match it sound-wise, and Alan all of a sudden had this thing laying around all these years.
What's the pickup thing?
Just same Alnicos.
I tried those burst buckers. Have you tried those?
I haven't tried any new pickups since 20 years ago.
If you're happy with it.
I hate fucking around with stuff, you know. If
Yeah.
it,
But they make the 59. It's almost like they're almost like PAFs. So what we're going to talk about here is basically your involvement in the album,
okay.
and we're going to ask a few questions about your knowledge of the Yardbirds. I don't know if you don't have any knowledge
I have,
of the
yeah.
Yardbirds, but we're going to talk about the great guitarists from that band, what it feels like for you to be a part of that Yardbird legacy, so to speak, as a guest on this new record. So I guess the first thing I want to talk about is, or you to talk about, is the first time you heard about the Yardbirds. How old were you? What were you?
I remember distinctly the time when the Yardbirds, I was first turned on to the Yardbirds. I was probably about 2 or 3. When I was still living in England, I was born there, and my dad is a full British rocker, So the Yardbirds, I mean, there was, all that. It was a whole explosion going on. This is 1967, 68, and 69. And that's all that music that was going on around the house was all, for the most part, English rock and roll. It was like, it was actually sort of before Zeppelin. It was the Moody Blues, right? Eric Clapton, the Stones, of course, and the Beatles, and the Yardbirds. And the Yardbirds was probably one of my dad's favorite because it was the most hardcore at the time, And so that's where the name the Yardbirds came. I was hip to that, and I remember they had the great logo, And as far as following the band, it was such a household thing for me that I never really paid that much attention as to who was who and which guitar players were which until way later when I started playing guitar. And then that was the whole Clapton, Beck, Jimmy Page, all that kind of stuff. And that's when you first start playing, you're really hungry for background on some of these great guitar players, and you find out all the bands they've been in. It's a real exciting period, And so that was sort of, in a nutshell, how the Yardbirds sort of had 2 big introductions in my life,
At the age of 2.
2, yeah.
And then when it becomes musicology 101, that's what you're going for, right?
Yeah, exactly.
You have to go back to the greats.
Well, you go back and you find all the stuff that you're familiar with, and it turns out to be a major influence on your guitar playing when you start picking up the guitar and making a life out of that, making a vocation out of it. All of a sudden, the stuff that you've been listening to ever since you were as long as you can remember is like the major support system for your technique and for your sound and this and that. It's pretty cool.
You met Chris and Jim at the recording session for the first time.
Yeah.
Tell us about that experience.
It was just a real casual kind of thing. I think I was a little bit more intimidated having to go in and put a guitar on something that really, a track that really didn't need me to come in and do. You know, it was a lot to live up to. And so I was very intimidated, but they were very cordial and polite and let me do my thing. And I ended up having a really good time. It was a pretty quick session, but I was a little nervous going in.
Did you go back to the old Yardbirds records?
Yeah.
The woodshed a
Well,
little bit?
you know, they gave me Over, Under, Sideways, Down, which is perfect for me, but at the same time, I had to actually learn that lick, which I've never played before. There's certain licks that you hear and you recognize them for being great, and you don't really go near them because it's not necessary. It's been done, it sounds good, there's no reason to emulate it, but I found myself all these years later having to go back and figure that lick out. You know?
When I was coming up in bands, it was always like you pick up the needle and you set it back and forth just so you can shed these
Yeah.
things.
Well, in this particular day and age, it was on CD, and I didn't have the luxury of being able to go back and forth, except for like going back to the beginning of the song and hearing it, and then just picking it up by ear. You know.
The track turned out amazing.
I think it sounds pretty good. Yeah, I'm happy.
You've heard the record, other than your track, which is an amazing track. What are your favorite tracks?
Well, actually, I don't know all. Actually, they picked some pretty obscure Yardbird stuff. There was a couple tracks that I wasn't real familiar with. The Jeff Beck track I'm not familiar with, but it sounds great.
Well, that was a brand new track.
Yeah, oh, well, there you go. And then there's a couple other ones, but I don't remember the names of the songs. I've only listened to it. I've only got it like a week and a half ago, so I've only heard it a few times. But there's just some cool moments all throughout.
Now you are a member of the flock, so to speak. You know?
Yeah, it's an honor to be sort of included in, you know, as one of the guitar players that definitely had the Yardbirds influence and actually has enough with the wherewithal to be asked to come in and be included in this whole guitar arsenal kind of thing, you know, because there's some great players on there. You know, so it's very cool.
You started off with Top Topple. He was the first guitar player in the band,
Right.
and then it went into Jeff Beck, and then Jimmy Page, and then Eric Clapton came on afterwards.
Right.
Chippy Mail is the new new guitarist in the band, and he's got some big shoes to fill. How do you feel about his playing?
Well, from what I could tell on the record, I mean, actually on the song that I did, when I went in, I just laid my parts down, and he came in and put his on afterwards. And the marriage of the two is great. So he's definitely got the roots together. You know, I don't know how old, I don't know anything about this guy, but he's definitely got a recognizable sound, and he's got an approach that fits perfectly with it. And so, if you didn't know much about the band, you'd think he'd been in the band for a long time. So.
He's got that English legacy also. He was in a band called Dr. Feelgood.
Yeah.
And the harp player in the band was also from Dr. Feelgood. These two guys were just meant to play together.
Oh, see, that makes a lot of sense in the way it sounds. Yeah.
The new singer, John Iden, is a Detroit guy.
Really?
Yeah, he's a Detroit guy. He was brought in. He sounds a lot like Keith Ralph's original singer.
Mm-hmm.
These guys are in their early 60s, late 50s.
Right.
And they are members of the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and they see a future for their music. It's got to be inspiring to see guys who have had a band, lost a band, and started over and moved forward.
Well, you know, I mean, what these guys do is timeless, and as long as they recognize it enough to keep going, it's real inspiring for guys like me, because I'm sort of in that crossroads, you know, where I'm like, I'm going to be doing this till God knows when. But I mean, I remember thinking 30 was really old when I was 19, and so now that I'm at that mid-30s thing, I'm going on into my 40s, and it's great to see guys that are still doing it. You know, the Stones included, and you know, Clapton as well. You know, there's a lot of guys that are still out there and putting records out. And so the fact that the Yardbirds did this first one, you know, as sort of a new old band is really great, because it just gives you some hope as to what it is that you're going to be doing 15 and 20 years from now.
You got bands like the White Stripes and the Strokes, and they're all looking at the Yardbirds as their influences for a new garage band sound that's out today. We always go back to our elders for inspiration.
Mm-hmm.
Who are some of your inspirations as a guitarist?
Well, the Yardbirds was one of them. The Stones are definitely one of them. At one point, you know, I got into a lot of blues guitar players, so I was always a big B.B. King and Muddy Waters fan, Charlie Christian, stuff like that. And then, of course, there was guys that were influenced by the Yardbirds as well, like Aerosmith, you know, and I think that was one of the bands that picked up on the Yardbirds pretty well. Jeff Beck, of course, you know, and all those different bands that he's had. I mean, there's a lot of guitar players. I could go on and on and on. There's certain ones. Brian May's a great one. And you know, I like Angus Young. There's so many. I could just, if I could think of if I had a list in front of me, I could probably name 90% of the people on the list of all the rock guitar players that have come out since I started, you know, or before I started.
I asked Les Paul that same question.
Yeah.
And he said Django Reinhardt.
Yeah, well, Django is awesome. I mean, that's definitely a given. And then in that instance, you know, Les Paul is a huge influence on me. You know, and the fact that I've gotten a chance to play with him a few times has been very humbling.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
but Les Paul and Chet Atkins and even Roy Clark, you know.
It's an amazing guitar player.
Oh yeah.
There's a lot of kids now who you influenced, just like you were influenced by others. How do you deal with someone who comes up to you and says, you're my inspiration as a guitarist?
It's very surreal when somebody comes up and says that. It happens every so often, and you get a myriad of emotional reactions to it that you can't really pinpoint, but there's a lot going on. When a kid walks up to you and he goes, you know, I started playing guitar because of this song or that song or whatever, you're like, wow. You know, and you can't take it with a grain of salt because it's such a big deal, but you don't know how to react. So you just say, thank you very much, and, you know, try not to flip out over it, you know. But it has a huge effect on you for the moment. It's a big deal, you know, because I know how I am about guitar players that I've met that I grew up listening to, and how over the top you get when you get to meet one of them. You know, you don't even know where to begin to ask questions, if you ask any at all. So you get sort of frozen in that moment in time. So if somebody comes up to me, I sort of know what they're feeling, and that's probably one of the biggest compliments as a musician you can get.
Your influences are always evident in your playing. Where does your tone come from?
You know what? I think as soon as I got an electric guitar and plugged it in, whatever it is that I'm doing now started pretty much the same way back then. I knew what I wanted it to sound like, and I knew through trial and error what to use and what not to use to get that. And I've been trying to, I don't know, not necessarily like perfect it, but I just try and keep that base for everything that I do. And if I do anything above and beyond that, it starts from that base. And that's been like that ever since I was 15, 16 years old. And I guess that's a mixture of all the stuff. I have a real kind of defined sense of what I like and what I don't like. And so it makes it easy for me to sort of pick my own sound because it's what I want to hear, you know. And so I haven't really had a lot of experimenting going on. There was a period there with amps, you know, trying to find the right amp, trying to find the right guitar. But I knew when I'd hear it, I knew exactly when I thought it was right. It would be instantaneous. And I probably didn't have the experience to say that back then, but now looking back on it, I can tell how I got from that point to this point.
Where do you see yourself in 5 years as a guitarist?
Hopefully just touring. As a player, I'm in that process of discovering that I've learned a lot over the years, and it's becoming a little bit easier to express myself on the guitar and know what I'm doing as to when I used to do it and not know how the hell I got this sound or that sound and just went with it. Now it's sort of becoming a little bit more second nature, and so I figure the next 5 years I'm just going to be out playing, doing what it is that I've always been doing just 5 years later, you know.
When the Yardbirds wanted to put this record out, they wanted to be true to their sound as a band.
Yeah.
And their focus was, we want to find a producer who's going to catch the rawness of our sound, of our garage band sound, and we wanted to stay true to the Yardbirds legacy. So when you find yourself playing and sitting in as a guest in something like that, do you find yourself changing the way you play to fit the genre of the Yardbirds?
No, ironically enough, doing the Yardbirds track, I just came in with my sort of stock setup without even, actually without even being respectful enough to ask, if that would be appropriate. But I think I figured that's why I got the phone calls. Is sort of what it is that I do would sort of fit right in. And so I just took my standard kind of setup, my regular guitar and my regular amp, and just went in, and it just fit, And I think that's probably because of all the years of listening to the Yardbirds. That's half where a big portion of my sound came from.
Yeah.
And so it just, they just slapped that on there. It was great.
It was a perfect song for you.
Yeah, it was. It was. Out of all the songs that are on the record, I think there's only maybe one or two others, which I can't remember the names of, that I would have wanted to do, but none of them as much as I would have wanted to have done that song.
Great riff, great riffer.
Yeah, right? Thanks.
Yeah. I was amazed by Train Keep a Rollin' because we're so used to
the Aerosmith version.
Version of it. And you've got Satriani coming in.
Sounds killer,
and
too.
He shows up with a Telecaster.
Right.
And I was drawn to his sound because it's not really a Satriani sound.
Right.
He more or less just kind of tipped his hat to the genre, came in with a Telecaster, and just ripped it up as the song was originally.
Yeah, well, I mean, for Joe, it's sort of a departure for his normal kind of a thing, I mean, he's a pretty flexible, all-around kind of guitar player. He does a lot of different stuff, but his signature sound isn't really what you call a Yardbirds thing. But he's so capable of doing it that all he has to do is just tweak a couple things, and he fits right in. And on that note, like when I came in to do it, I sort of knew that the kind of tone that I normally have for that particular song was going to be great. Whereas if I do sessions, like just recently doing the Ray Charles stuff, then I don't bring in a Les Paul and a Marshall. You just know better. It's not going to work. So I try to learn how to adapt when I get into professional situations where I'm playing with people that have a sound that's far removed from the one that I normally use. And I think that's sort of what Joe was doing with the Yardbirds.
I got to tell you, we're honored to have you on the record. I'm so proud of your track, and I'm so proud of what you put on the record that I got to thank you for the guys in the band. I'm sure they thank you personally.
I thank you very much.
In Texas, it's going to be a lot of fun.
I know, the jam's going to be great.
A live performance.
Yeah. So we'll kick it up a notch, as Emerald would say.
So that's it.
All right, cool, man.
Thank you very much.
Well,